All right, welcome to the March 8th City Council meeting. I am not Mayor Bacon. He is not with us, so I am assuming this glorious role, which I've missed kind of. It was fun when I was mayor for that hot minute. Anyway, can we start with roll call?
Councilmember Babcock. Councilmember Brookover.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Here. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by Councilmember Watson, second. Seconded by Councilmember Babcock. And approval of the regular council minutes from February 22nd. Is there a motion to approve?
Are we going to vote on the agenda?
Oh yeah, I guess we could have vote on the agenda. I'm determined to have a very quick meeting today, so I thought I would abbreviate it by
Wanna just
skipping
skip
that.
all the voting
Yeah,
and
just
go
skip
right
the
ahead?
voting. Yep. Yep. All right. Vote to approve the agenda. Aye.
Aye.
That looks like it's approved. Okay, now on to the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
Moved by Councilmember Babcock. Second.
A second.
And seconded by Councilmember Watson. And just for fun, let's vote on that. Aye.
Aye.
All right, cruising right along, communications. We have an online communications packet that has all of the communication that has been received by council, mostly emails, but some other things as well. So if you are interested, you can check that out. Also, if you have sent something to council and you don't see it there, please bring it to our attention so that we can correct that. Do I have anyone in attendance that would like to make public comment? That looks like no. Nicole, do we have anyone in the online queue for public comment?
We do not have any callers on the line.
Excellent. Moving on to communications from the mayor and council members. Would any council members like to speak? Councilmember Babcock.
Thank you. The city is seeking nominations for the Crystal Awards, and I believe we have a nominee here at this very table, Mayor Pro Tem Jesse Gregg.
Oh, wait, what? What was I nominated for?
You are a past Crystal Awards.
Oh, yes, that's
Winner.
right. Yes, well,
And-
as a group, yes, in a group of other people.
Okay. And the city is seeking nominations for the Crystal Awards. This should be an East Lansing resident who dedicates a significant amount of volunteer time to projects and programs, a passion, commitment to having a vibrant and healthy community, serves as a role model, serves a vital role that is not otherwise fulfilled in the community. The nomination qualifications are online, and just about everybody I've met in East Lansing qualifies in one way or another. Current city employees are not eligible, and previous winners are not eligible. Please think of your neighbors and the people you deal with. We have some really fantastic people, and it would be great to recognize them. The second thing is we seem to have a problem again with the water seeping. I read in the Nextdoor app that a gentleman who lives in Chesterfield Hills normally uses 9,000 gallons of water. He's been billed for 60,000 gallons of water. I think if this were a toilet, he'd have an Olympic-sized swimming pool in his basement. And even if it were a lawn irrigation system, he would have a sizable moat that would probably extend to the Capitol. I'm concerned about this recurring problem, and I don't know what it is, but it seems to crop up all over the city. Sometimes it is, in fact, a leaking toilet. And I know that the fact that we bill quarterly can affect people's memory of how much water they've used, but 60,000 gallons, we should all be using ARCs. So if we could perhaps look into that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly. Anyone else? Council, no. Mr. Brookover, Councilmember Watson, anything? I just wanted to call everybody's attention to the resolution on our consent agenda celebrating Women's History Month. I didn't catch if this was mentioned in that resolution, which was quite thorough, and I encourage you to read it. But it occurred to me that the entire time I have been serving on this body, we have had a majority of women on the East Lansing City Council, which I think is pretty cool. Not that the boys aren't great, but I have really appreciated serving with these other very inspiring women. So if you haven't had a chance to read that, I encourage you to do so. It's pretty well written, as is everything that comes from our DEI director. All right, City Manager, anything to report?
Thank you. Just one quick item is to say welcome to our new city attorney. Anthony Chubb is joining us at the table for the first time. Look forward to working with you. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Cool. Well, you stole my thunder. I was going to welcome Mr. Chubb for his first meeting. Do you have anything for your first report, Mr. City Attorney?
No, I don't have a report other than to say thank you. I'm very excited to working with you all. Never hesitate to reach out to me.
Excellent. We're excited to have you. Welcome to the table. Moving on to the consent agenda. George, do you want to read that for us?
We have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 3.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. A, Tom Alwin to the Commission on the Environment for a full term ending December 31st, 2024. B, Ann Erhardt to the Commission on the Environment for a full term ending December 31st, 2024. C, Chad Wing to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a partial term ending December 31st, 2022. 3.2, approve a resolution celebrating Women's History Month. 3.3, approve a resolution acknowledging Michigan's Severe Weather Awareness Week. 3.4, set a public hearing for March 22nd, 2022, to consider a special use permit for the establishment of a fraternity at 251 West Grand River Avenue. Item 3.5, set a public hearing for March 22nd, 2022, to consider a special use permit for the establishment of a fraternity at 532 Ann Street. Item 3.6, set a public hearing for March 22nd, 2022, to consider a special use permit for the establishment of a marijuana retailer at 1415 East Michigan Avenue. Item 3.7, approve a multi-year contract with Rehmann Robson LLC to perform the annual audit of the city's financial statements, including the single audit, and authorize the finance director to sign the annual engagement letter. Item 3.8, approve the Memorandum of Agreement resolution for the Greater Lansing Regional Stormwater Program. Item 3.9, approve the settlement agreement for the Nichols v. City of East Lansing case. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Johannes.
Consent agenda?
Would anybody like anything removed before we move the approval? No? All right. We've got a motion from Mr. Brookover. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Watson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Looks like it's unanimous, which brings us to the business agenda. 4.1, consideration of a policy resolution 2022-4, a resolution to extend the policy temporarily allowing streamlined review of restaurants proposing expanded outdoor dining areas. Mr. Menser, welcome to the table.
Thank you. Just a quick, in light of the time constraints here. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Peter Menser. I'm the Planning and Zoning Administrator for the city. Thanks for the opportunity to address you this evening. For your consideration tonight is an extension of the current policy resolution authorizing a temporary streamlined approval process for restaurants to use public rights of way for outdoor dining. The policy includes the following. It allows for temporary administrative approvals for outdoor dining areas to be administered by the Planning and Zoning Administrator, that is me. It temporarily eliminates the fees typical for such a request, which includes the $50 right-of-way fee and $250 site plan fee. That fee was reduced in subsequent policy resolutions, but that's what it originally was. So as noted in previous years and iterations of this policy resolution, any participating restaurants are subject to all of the typical requirements necessary to address the safety of restaurant patrons, as well as passage for residents and visitors traversing sidewalks and other public spaces where outdoor dining may be located. The primary requirement for this process, among others, is the submittal of a plan identifying the area proposed for seating, as well as layout of the space. A minimum of 5 feet is required for pedestrian access, which ensures, at minimum, enough room for 2 wheelchair users to pass one another. Also required are proper authorizations from agencies such as the County Health Department, Michigan Liquor Control Commission, if alcohol is being served, as well as proof of insurance naming the city as a covered party. So the original policy resolution allowed year-round use of the right-of-way, including the winter months, with the submittal of a snow removal plan. But staff is proposing the program run instead this year only until November 15, 2022, as the outdoor winter seating proved not to be a popular thing. Staff intends to return to council at or before this November with a permanent policy addressing the use of public spaces for restaurants, as well as other businesses not currently identified under this policy. Prior to coming back to council, staff intends on consulting with the Downtown Development Authority and other stakeholders to craft a policy that is both comprehensive and easy to use. So for your consideration is a motion it's provided at the bottom of my staff memorandum proposing to adopt a policy resolution, in this case renamed 2022-4, for a time period beginning March 15, 2022 and ending November 15, 2022. Thank you for your time. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Menser. Are there any questions for Mr. Menser? Councilmember Babcock.
I just thank you for considering the width of wheelchairs when you wrote the resolution. That often gets overlooked, and I do appreciate it.
I have some questions, but I think they might be more appropriate if somebody makes a motion and it's seconded.
Sure, I'll accept a motion. If you're on the electronic version of the packet, the suggested motion is on page 78. Or I can move it myself, if you guys don't mind. I will move approval to adopt the resolution approving policy resolution 2022-4 for a time period beginning March 14th, 2022 and ending November 15th, 2022. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Babcock for purposes of discussion. Mr. Brookover.
Mr. Menser, I don't mean to pick on you, and maybe you're not the right person to ask the questions of, because I can't remember when you got here, okay?
Sir.
And I don't want to put our new city attorney on the spot either, so the first question is really kind of quasi-legal. So I look at this resolution, which I assume copies the old resolution, and section 1 says, capacity added by the modified site plan. It's page 61, Council. Capacity added by the modified site plan may not exceed either A, the current capacity limits of any approved site plan, or B, under any pandemic order or emergency order issued by public health officials. What I'm curious about is A. So can somebody tell me, does that mean the total capacity stays the same? Or are we adding to capacity?
I can, thank you for the question. I can provide an answer on how the policy is carried out. But as to the origin of it, someone else on council may want to address that. In practice, the way this is handled is, let's say the occupancy established for a restaurant is X. They choose to have outdoor seating. The outdoor seating is approved and is in a good spot and everything. So let's say they have 100 seating for 100. The restaurant continues to have seating for 100. 50 of those may be outside, but they still remain at 100. That was a policy that was enacted, I think, in a previous iteration of this, that someone else may want to provide clarity on.
So my second question is, who is it that walks around at 9 o'clock at night and checks the occupancy?
Well, it's not so much that someone's looking for that. It's there would be a plan that number is established in. If we do receive a complaint, we would check it, whether it be myself, we could have the fire marshal check it out. I think any number of our staff would be qualified to do that.
Okay, well, in the old days, when I used to represent bars, 30 or 40 years ago, there was fairly regular policing, for want of better terminology, of the various restaurant and bar establishments. And so there were periodic walkthroughs. Sometimes they were authorized by the State Liquor Control Commission. So can you tell me, absent a complaint, is there anybody that's checking on this stuff?
I can call the police department up and they can talk about their inspection process and what they do if you want for a second.
I'd love to hear that, and then I'd love to hear if they actually have people available that can do that for the next 8 months. Please.
Thank you, sir. Jack Conley, Captain, East Lansing Police Department. So randomly on given nights, our officers do take time out of their assigned shift to patrol in the downtown area, to travel through the liquor establishments like you speak of, check capacity, check for intoxication issues. So with this type of ordinance, normally when we go into a restaurant, we're not counting heads. But if there is a complaint, or if that's something that that you want us to add to our normal staffing duties, it is something that we can absolutely do. However, as you said, staffing is short. However, we are still staffing at minimums, and we are still patrolling in the downtown area. For these type of events, we can do checking on that at random times.
Okay, but no offense to you, unless there's a complaint, you're not going into those establishments and counting heads, unless there's a complaint, correct?
Liquor establishments, we do, occasionally, yes, we do.
Occasionally, okay. And so my next question, I'm addressing it to the peanut gallery, I guess, but so, forgive me, because I only went downtown 3 or 4 times when things were popping, but the establishments along Albert that I believe had seating on the sidewalk, and didn't that seating essentially end up being contiguous to what I call the city zone in the middle of in the street?
Certainly it did, yes. With the closure, the Albert al fresco, with that closure, the seating was adjacent to that area.
Okay, so there wasn't room for 2 wheelchairs there.
Well, there was, in the plans that were approved, there were. And in practice, it is challenging to maintain that. And it is something that our staff has to be diligent about in getting out to making sure that happens. So a couple times over the course of the summer, we did engage with the restaurants to make sure that they would move things back. With changing staff at the restaurant level, they have different staff and different shifts, so not everybody always knew. A couple instances we had them put a mark on the ground so that their staff knew where to go. But we do have a team that can get out and regularly check that. But I do recognize that at times that didn't always happen, so we need to be diligent about that this summer.
Okay, so then my final question is, and maybe this is addressed to council, maybe to the mayor pro tem, but I have to acknowledge that I've just lost track of the various orders from the public health, from the local or state public health department. So what is the current active order with regard to bars and restaurants?
Well, there are no current, all capacity limits were lifted last in June of 2021. So there are no more capacity limits for indoor restaurants.
Okay, so why do we need this?
Well, I think it's an ongoing effort to ensure that restaurants have, everything available to them to really stay in business and thrive.
I also think that when we envisioned this last time, it was to be able to give them an easy way to get into the outdoors, which would encourage patrons who may not be willing to go into the restaurants to eat, to be able to come down and still patronize and come and dine downtown. So that was really the idea, was to get people into the downtown dining and supporting restaurants that may not be comfortable going inside the restaurant to eat.
Well, this all sort of, my questions get back to the data point I was making about closing off Albert, kind of logically, but I just have a suggestion, and that is, because I think the world's changed somewhat, hopefully Premier Putin doesn't start something here, but I would suggest that maybe we modify this so that it only goes through August 30th. So I guess I'll make that in the form of an amendment to it.
Speaking to your thought behind the August 30th date, and I guess further question, Mr. Menser has indicated that there is a plan to come back with a permanent plan. Would you be then kind of essentially asking them to move up the permanent plan, or would that
I don't
not?
know.
Okay.
Good question, I don't know.
Okay.
I can't think that far ahead.
Gotcha. So did you have?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I question the necessity right now. Second, I attended an RHC meeting today in which I think there's a continuing concern about safety with Albert being closed off. I think this gets us, I lost that argument, I understand that, but the reality is this gets us through the summer season when I guess people want to be on Albert. But I think probably halts this before football season starts and welcome week starts, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think in the interest of caution, because we can always come back and extend it some more. I guess that's really, there's no reason why we can't come back in the middle of August. If people want to extend it, they can extend it. So I'm just trying to be cautious.
So are you proposing that as an amendment to my motion, I guess?
Yes, and I'll make it a friendly amendment if you want me to.
You can, I do not agree, so I'm not
Well,
going
then
to
it can't
accept
be a
that.
friendly amendment. So I
Yeah.
move to amend the ongoing motion, if I can get a second.
Okay. Does he need a second on that? Okay, is there a second for Mr. Brookover's amendment?
I can make a second. Can I ask questions too?
Sure, you can ask questions without seconding as
Okay.
well, but you can definitely second.
Yeah, I can make a
You can
second.
just shut me down without second.
So we can.
You know.
When did we stop it this year?
It actually still runs. It's running until March.
Okay, so it's still, I guess I haven't been downtown that much then.
Yeah,
enough
well,
to
no
notice.
one's taken advantage of the winter months for
Yeah.
outdoor seating, which is understandable. And that's one of the reasons that staff is suggesting we just stop it in November, and that'll give us time to come back with a policy instead of extending the policy resolution, as now has happened a few times, which is understandable given the circumstances. We can come back with a policy that's kind of more comprehensive.
Well, I think it's cool during football season. People are already bundled up anyway to be outside and to be hanging out in East Lansing. So I think it's cool to extend it into the football season and may be helpful to the restaurants as well.
I have another question. So, and again, forgive me, I don't know when you got here. I'm sorry. How many restaurants took advantage of this?
There were, I have a list. There were 7.
Okay.
Baps, Grand Traverse Pie, Barrio, Jolly Pumpkin, for Crepe's Sake, Harper's, they didn't actually end up doing but they did file an application. And LS Teco, same story. They had plans for a bigger area out in the plaza there, but never pulled the trigger on it.
So they were all on Albert?
All of them except for Grand Traverse Pie. And I think Baps is on Albert, but further down.
Did you say for Crepe's Sake is on MAC?
Yeah, they're on MAC.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that one.
For Crepe's Sake is on MAC.
Oh, okay.
And they had just a couple tables outside.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have a seconded amendment on the table that we need to vote on before we can go back to the original motion. All in favor of Mr. Burgover's amendment? Aye. All opposed? Aye. I'm afraid that we are not in agreement with you, Mr. B, but we love your contributions. All right, back to the motion as originally moved. Is there further discussion?
I do have some questions.
Ms. Watson.
So, Councilmember Brookover mentioned the RHC. Any other commissions made any comments about what they thought about this going forward?
I haven't heard any, but I also don't attend those meetings, but nothing's been shared with me.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, the RHC didn't have anything to say about this
Not about this.
specific thing.
Okay.
I haven't heard from them.
And before the process was they'd have to like go through planning and go through council and wait, and then maybe it didn't, even come through. Like I remember when Harper's was trying.
Yeah, Harper's was somewhat of a unique case. They were proposing something that was beyond kind of the scope of this temporary ordinance. 2 things, really. Pre-2014, in 2014, council adopted an ordinance that related specifically to the use of public spaces, and that allowed for restaurants proposing, for example, on Albert Street, on expanding into the sidewalk. They would go direct to council, and they would pay a fee. They would have to do the layout, kind of all the things that I mentioned here. For restaurants currently outside of the downtown area that are not using public spaces, they go through our site plan modification process. And so that entails depending on the scope of it, it could be an administrative review. It could be something that goes to Planning Commission and City Council.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a brief question. I know that you guys can't say specifically who all would be eligible without getting out there with your measuring tapes, but do you have a sense of if there are restaurants that would be able to take advantage of this that have not yet, other than the few that you mentioned that did not end up fulfilling their plan?
Yeah, there are definitely more opportunities than participants so far.
Okay.
It really depends on the street layout. So
Sure.
Adam Cummins, our Community and Economic Development Administrator, and I have talked quite a bit about this. In fact, we are over on Division Street today. There are some areas that are very well suited for this kind of thing, and there are some that are not. So that's definitely one of the challenges of the proposal. It's all about balancing, pedestrian access with the opportunity for outdoor seating.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All right, that's a 3-1, which means that we have approved it. Thank you, Mr. Menser.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we have moved on to adjournment. And I don't think I beat Mr. Bacon's record. I think we just about tied, but that's okay. I appreciate the good discussion around that last item. All right, well, good night, everybody. See ya next week.